this because I actually created this with Kelly. Something Kelly said in the Q&A last time we had the webinar got me thinking like, oh my gosh, yeah, we need to talk about that because that is something that people experience a lot. So Kelly had talked about in her question how, you know, we talked about there's a space between stimulus and response, right? There's that space of time that you have the opportunity to arrest a reaction. And sometimes that space is really, really small for a lot of people. And sometimes it's so small that it seems non-existent. It seems like it's not there at all. It's still there, but it's very hard to perceive it and to take advantage of it and use it to your advantage and to help your relationship. So we're going to talk about why that space between stimulus and response gets so small. How does that happen and what to do about it? How to make it bigger? What can we do to make that space between stimulus and response bigger so that we do have more opportunity to put the brakes on our reactions, put the brakes on taking things personally, to put the brakes on seeing everything as an attack and going, is this really an attack? Is this really something I want to react to widen that space so we have more opportunities to do that. So let me check the slideshow, make sure that that has uploaded. Yes. Okay. So please put in chat if you can see the first slide that says you can't think clearly or respond cleanly in survival mode. Give me a thumbs up if you can see that. Ooh, yes, you can see it. Oh my gosh, this is awesome. I love learning. It's great. Okay. So in survival mode, we're going to talk about that. How to regulate your nervous system so you can respond instead of react. So, this is not giving me my notes though. It's only giving me the slides. So I'm going to look at the notes. So we're not overreacting because you're irrational, right? It's really easy to point fingers and saying you're being irrational, but it's because your nervous system is overloaded, right? So when this isn't like a personality flaw, this is physiology. And when your nervous system is dysregulated constantly, you're more reactive, you're less patient, you're more defensive, and you're less able to access logic. Okay, so this is physiology. So we have, like I said before, we have stimulus, we have a space, and we have a response. And like I said, some people's space is longer than others, and others are really short. And also, like I said before, some are so short that it seems like it's not there. So something will happen, like there's a tone or a comment or some kind of behavior, and in that window behind, after those things happening, you can choose your response. But many people don't experience it as a window, right? They just experience stimulus, reaction, because your nervous system is too activated. It's too overstimulated. It's too overloaded, okay? And a lot of people are experiencing this because life has become very complicated and very busy and very isolated. We evolved to be in groups of about 100 people. That's how our brains evolved. That's how our instincts evolved. And we don't live like that anymore. We live in nuclear families and even less than that, actually. Maybe one parent is raising kids or, people live alone, and we're not designed for that. And with the complexity of life, yes, we can do hard things, but we are not designed to do all of the hard things by ourselves. So, and just to be full disclosure, the last couple of weeks I have been in a burnout. I could feel it coming on, and I was like, oh no. And boom, here I am in burnout. So I am taking steps to remedy that, and we're going to talk about that. So why does the space disappear? So when your nervous system is constantly stressed or activated for weeks on end, months, or even years, some people experience that, you're in survival mode, also known as burnout. So like I said, a small stimulus can shift you into panic mode. You go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And, when you're in fight, you get angry, you get into defensiveness. If your go-to coping is flight, then you'll do avoidance or withdrawal. A lot of people do that one. Freeze, shut down, silent treatment. My son does the shutdown where he just freezes and he can't make a decision. He can't do anything. And then there's fawn, which is people pleasing or appeasing people. And these are not conscious choices. They are automatic coping responses that we've practiced over and over, that we've used to try to keep us safe, to save us from stress in the short term, right? So what survival mode does, like I said, it's also known as burnout. In survival mode, you lose access to logic, you misinterpret tone, you take things personally, you definitely escalate faster, right? So if you have more space, you might interpret tone as an attack, but it slowly escalates, not slowly, but slower. So you can feel the tension rising in your body, and since you can feel it happening, it's going slower, and you can go, "Oh, I don't want that tension," and you can arrest it. But when you're in survival mode, you can't really anticipate it. It goes from 0 to 60 in a second, right? It just, and a lot of people are experiencing this, and a lot of people are in relationship with people who are experiencing this. And then, of course, you regret what you say later. So small things turn into big fights. Conversations will go sideways a lot, and you say things that you don't mean, right? Everyone's experienced this. And I know that when I'm stressed, when I'm burned out, I am more reactive. I definitely have a harder time mediating negative emotion. So what do we do about that? You can't outthink dysregulation, unfortunately. A lot of people try to, solve this with mindset. Just have a positive attitude. Just choose your attitude in the morning. Choose your mindset. Start your day with, a ritual that starts you out with a great mindset. And it sounds nice, but that doesn't really work. Positive thinking, reframing a circumstance, right, that you have perceived as an attack. Reframing isn't something that you can do because you've already reacted to it. You can reframe after the fact when you're having to say sorry, but in the moment, it's just not available. You can't outthink dysregulation by just telling yourself to stay calm, because if the body is fully activated, the mind follows the body, not the other way around. All right, so the real skill is, we don't want to eliminate all triggers. We don't want to cut all people out of our lives so we never get triggered, because then we get isolated, and that's a whole other stressor. The goal is to increase your capacity to stay regulated when you're triggered, right? So that's mental health, is increasing capacity. We still get triggered. That is human. Everybody does. But when your nervous system is supported, you can recover faster. You can stay more grounded. You can create more space, right? And you can escalate slower. So, right, like I said, regulation creates space, and a supportive nervous system gives you access to choice. Whereas without a supportive nervous system, there is no choices. Stimulus, response, and you can't stop it. So when your body's calm enough, you can pause, you can think, you can choose your words carefully, you can stay connected, and you can access emotional maturity. So how do we support our nervous system? How do we widen that space? Well, first of all, what makes that space get smaller? Let's talk about all the different things. I said a little bit about it, like, life has become more complex, but let's use the actual examples, the detailed examples. If you're not sleeping well, if you have seen me talk at all about what I do, you probably have heard me say something about sleep. If you're not sleeping well, if you're not sleeping enough, you can't mediate negative emotion. You're going to be a grumpy jerk, whether, your intentions are to not be that. So, put something in the chat if you can relate to any of this. Nutrition, if you're eating highly inflammatory foods, if you're eating a lot of carbs, then your body's going to be exposed to a lot of insulin. Insulin drives inflammation, and inflammation is a stress on your body. Inflammation on the brain, it's a stress, so your cognition doesn't work so well. Who here has noticed that, if they're not eating so well, their cognition starts to suffer? Yeah, right. Thank you. Yeah. So nutrition really matters to keep your overall stress load low, your internal cellular stress. Blood sugar stability, like if you're eating glucose on an empty stomach, if you're eating a lot of carbs, your blood sugar is going to spike and then it's going to dip, and your emotions are going to do the same thing. It's going to be a roller coaster. And anyone who is in relationship with you is going to be riding that roller coaster too. It's not fun. Also, caffeine, stimulants, right? If you're using caffeine to push yourself through the day, that works on adrenaline. And adrenaline is the body's way of dealing with stress, of dealing with threats. Yes, and Stephen said, as a type 1 diabetic, I feel the blood sugar swings in my mood, right? And so that's an extreme example, but even subtly, other, people who don't have diabetes experience this. In fact, there was a study that was done that's kind of funny, but they gave couples voodoo dolls, or like dolls representing their spouse, and they told them that the researchers instructed participants to put a pin in the doll every time you felt annoyed or irritated at your spouse. And at the end of the study, they were also measuring everybody's blood sugar levels continually. And at the end of the study, they found that those who had sharper spikes and falls in their blood sugar had put more pins in the doll representing their spouse. So it wasn't that their spouse was being more irritating or annoying. It's just that they were more irritable, more annoyable. Also, alcohol, that really, really stresses your whole system. I don't believe that alcohol belongs in the human system. It really creates anxiety. A lot of people use it to manage anxiety, but it actually creates anxiety and exacerbates anxiety, which is stress. And then I've already talked about stress load. So we have complex lives. And if you're trying to do it all alone, if you don't have people around to help you with all of the things, you're going to be stressed, just like I have been the last couple of weeks. And it's not that I haven't had people, I haven't been leaning on them as much as I could have. And then lack of movement definitely stresses the system, your whole system, because movement, it helps with the flow of energy, and then things get stagnant. And when things get stagnant, they don't work so well, and then we have stress on the body. And then, of course, lack of sunlight. Even here in Arizona, where I live, lots of people are low in vitamin D, and it's because we stay indoors. Usually, a lot of times because it's too hot to go outside, or we have jobs that are indoors. Most people have jobs indoors, so we are deficient in vitamin D. And all these factors really determine how reactive you are before a conversation even begins, right? And there's more than that, of course. So escaping burnout. How do we escape burnout? So first thing is we want to simplify our lives. We want to get systems in place to make it so that we don't have to think so much to do our repetitive things that we do in our life. Systems are great because it offloads having to think and make a bunch of decisions, and decision fatigue is a real thing. Also delegating, not just delegating tasks, but delegating thinking, delegating decisions. So one of the things that I've done recently that has been a huge game changer in my stress load and lifting the burden from me is I have been delegating the meal planning to my children, the dinner meal planning. So I have all these little magnetic pieces of paper that we have a menu on the fridge that is magnetic. And then I have all these menu options or these dinner recipe titles printed on magnets. And so on the weekends, my kids get them all out and put them on the table, and they negotiate, what are we going to have throughout the week? What are we going to cook? So they come up with a meal plan, which is, oh my gosh, the decision making that I don't have to do on a day-to-day basis because they're doing that is incredible. Because let me tell you how it used to be. I wouldn't have a plan for dinner because I didn't want to have to do all that deciding, but I have to do it. I have to decide anyway on the day. And I would start the day, or it'd be midday, and go, oh shoot, what am I making for dinner? What am I going to make for dinner, right? And so I'd think about it, and maybe I'd pull something out of the freezer to get thawed, right? Or I would make a decision about something that I would make a decision of what we were going to make. And then like a couple hours later, I would forget that I made the decision already. And I would go through the stress again of saying to myself, oh, what am I going to make for dinner? And this would happen 2 or 3 times a day. That little tiny moment of panic of like, oh, I don't have a plan for dinner. And then remembering, oh, wait, yeah, I do have a plan for dinner. That really weighed on me. And so now I have the kids plan it all out. And then also my least favorite chore is grocery shopping. I absolutely abhor grocery shopping. So after they plan out the meal plan, I look up the recipes. I write down all of the things that we need that we don't already have on the grocery list. And then I take a child with me grocery shopping. And I get caught up on emails or something, or I just chill out and nap in the car while they grocery shop with my credit card. It is everything. It is so great. It has really reduced my stress. And it's setting my kids up for success in having some great skills, adult skills, planning, shopping, budgeting, that kind of thing. So that delegation has been such a game changer. Also saying no when people offer you opportunities that you even want to do. Like people ask me all the time if I'll volunteer for something at church or take on some kind of collaboration with another business that we would support each other. And sometimes I just have to say, no, I don't have space for that. But it means I have to be honest with myself about what I have space for. And sometimes that's really hard. Sometimes we need somebody in our lives to help call bullshit on us when we want to say yes to something and clearly we don't have space for it. Also in the simplifying, I have recently been moving out of my role. I have a volunteer role with my son's Boy Scout troop, and it's been a stressor. It's been a major stressor, and I'm not the right person for that role anyways. And so I'm so grateful that another parent stepped up so that I can move out of that role and get that constant stressor off of me. So it does take time to make these moves when we realize that we have built a life that is unsustainable by one person. It does take time to figure out what can I say no to, what can I delegate, but the time is well worth it because otherwise you're just living on a treadmill forever and ever and ever. And then your health can really, really start to suffer. So like I said, removing tasks that aren't aligned, that's the one with the scouts. I don't want to do that anymore. And then getting socially resourced and lean on those connections. So like I was saying, we are not meant to be doing everything alone. If you don't have family living by you, or if you don't have family that you can depend on, or you don't have family that your nervous system can feel safe around, then you need to make connections with people who are safe people who are dependable, people who do want to help, people who have a less complex life than yours, maybe people whose children, if you have children, whose children have already launched into the world, people who are retired and they don't have much to do and they love helping people, right? And they're lonely, right? A lot of people who are retired are living alone, and they would love to be able to help people out. So getting socially resourced, reach out, find a spiritual community that you align with and make connections with those people and really embed yourself into some kind of community. I've seen even people reach out on their social media asking for friendship. Actually, I see this on Nextdoor a few times a month at least, where people are saying, does anybody want to be friends? I don't have any friends. I'm new in town. I don't know how to meet friends. I just go to work and I don't have friends at work. Like people want to be friends and friends like to help you. So get socially resourced. And then also balancing your adrenal glands. So if you're in burnout, even while you're doing all of these things to get out of burnout, your body can stay in burnout if you don't balance it, right? So another word for burnout is adrenal fatigue. And I have a protocol with some nutraceuticals that if you follow that protocol and you sleep and you drink plenty of water, you can balance out your cortisol patterns pretty easily, actually, in like 7 days or less. And you start noticing that you have more space between stimulus and response. You can organize your thoughts better. A lot of people in burnout have a hard time prioritizing what to do first and second, or they're in freeze and they have so many things that they can't actually get started on all the things. And actually, so adrenal fatigue symptoms are indistinguishable from ADHD symptoms. Let that one land. A lot of people have been diagnosed with ADHD, but they just have a flipped cortisol pattern. They're just in burnout, and maybe they've been burnout for years. And yes, that's possible. So, we could just balance our bodies and we'd be able to organize our thoughts. We'd be able to prioritize our tasks. So if you want that protocol, send me an email, marianne@mariannedrew.com, and I will send you the protocol. And then, of course, like I said a little bit earlier, remove or limit exposure to environmental stressors. Environment is huge. It's a huge part of how we show up and who we show up as. So getting your diet dialed in, look at the chemicals in your home, like your cleaning chemicals. If you're using whatever you buy at Target or Walmart or Costco, I guarantee you that is putting a chemical load on your body. I recommend the Melaleuca company or other such companies for getting the toxic chemicals out of your home. Clutter, especially for women, is a stressor. The visual clutter, if your home or your environment that you're in a lot is not orderly, it puts a ton of psychological stress on people. Raise your hand if you relate to that one. And then volatile people, right? So a lot of times I'm working with couples and you've got one burned out person in relationship with another burned out person, and their nerve systems are just crashing against each other all the time, and there's really no end in sight. And in those cases, you really do need to take a break from each other. You need to have 6 weeks of like not having much contact with that person as much as possible while you heal your adrenal glands and get out of burnout, and hopefully they are too, because it's really, really, really challenging, if not impossible, to balance your system when you have a constant, unpredictable stressor in your life that you have no escape from. Yeah, clutter stress. I know clutter stresses Steven out. Me too. I do not like clutter. So volatile people, or like I said, other burned out people, limit your exposure. There was a time in our lives when things were really stressful and my husband got deployed to Cuba, and it was actually a wonderful blessing so that we could heal our nervous systems. And then when we got back together from that deployment, things were way, way better. So some prescription medications put a big stressor on the body, especially hormonal birth control. It basically prevents a female from having a cortisol response to stress. And we need to have cortisol to help us respond to stressors and weather stressors and solve those stressors. If we don't have cortisol, we can't respond. We can't interface really with challenges. And then if you are in burnout, and if you're a regular working out person, right, and maybe you're used to lifting weights or doing HIIT workouts that are pretty intense, when you're healing, when you're trying to balance yourself out, it's really best for the time being to switch to low impact workouts like yoga, stretching, just breathing and stretching. Just really low impact will take a lot of this because exercise is a stressor. And then the least stressful food that we can eat is meat, animal flesh, because it's very bioavailable and it doesn't drive inflammation like insulin as a response to carbohydrates. So temporarily, if you can reduce your carb intake a lot and eat mostly animal protein, your burnout will balance out faster. All right, so moving on. So just an example, and I think I talked about this before a little bit, blood sugar and reactivity. When you have unstable blood sugar, you have a higher emotional reactivity. And anybody who's had kids knows this, right? If your kid hasn't had a snack, if they come home from school and they didn't have much of a lunch, they're going to be grumpy and annoying and pick fights and rage bait you. They just will, and they won't be able to stop themselves. So, hi, Kelly. Thanks for coming. So anyone who's taken care of kids has seen this, and a lot of times the fix for somebody who is reactive emotionally is to be like, have you eaten? Do you need a snack? And just get them a snack. Also, like we were talking about earlier, the sleep in your nervous system. Poor sleep definitely creates lower emotional tolerance. Like we just can't handle negative emotion when we haven't slept. It's our window between stimulus and response gets super duper short. So sleep quality, sleep duration, it really does matter. At least 7 hours of uninterrupted sleep is essential to have a supported nervous system. And then, the real win, of course, it's not perfection. That's not what we're looking for, right? We still react even when we have simplified our life, even when we have delegated tasks, when we have created a habit of saying no, checking in with ourselves and saying no when we authentically cannot take on another thing on our plate. When we have dialed in all those things, we still, life sometimes stresses us out. Just hopefully we're not continually and always stressed, right? So you'll still react, but progress looks like catching yourself sooner when something could be perceived as an attack, repairing faster, right? So you stay angry less amount of time, you stay hurt less time, you're able to access your rational brain and think your way through the issue. And then staying grounded overall is, something that you can expect when you solve the burnout problem and get out of survival mode. And, I can always tell when I'm working with someone who is in survival mode because by like session 5, 6, they don't have a lot of wins. They're not reporting a lot of celebrations. They're still having the same struggle with the same things. That's when I'm like, oh, okay, we need to switch gears here. We need to look at your life and we need to see what we can offload. And then I hook them up with resources of how they can offload something. So I have this client recently realized she was in burnout. Her husband's probably in burnout too, even though I'm not working with him, but it sounds like the way that he responds and reacts that he's probably in burnout too. And so I connected her with a VA to help her with the business that she's building on the side. I connected her with a housekeeper to have some help with the house. I shared with her my meal planning system with my kids because she's got 2 kids that are my kids' age that could absolutely be doing what my kids are doing. And meal prep service too, while the kids are learning how to cook. My kids already know how to cook, so it was just adding on the meal planning and the grocery shopping on top of that. So she's doing a meal prep service, not meal prep, but I mean, it's meal prep, but they don't cook it, right? So it comes to your house and then you cook it. So it's really good practice for her kids while they're learning how to cook, and then she can start delegating even more. So, but the goal, right, is to have better responses and faster recovery. So if you want better communication, fewer misunderstandings and assumptions, you need a nervous system that can support that. And if this resonates, I help individuals and couples break patterns like this and build stronger, more connected relationships. So if you are interested in learning more about that, you can book a discovery call at maryandrew.com. And just letting you know what's coming up for Mary Andrew Coaching. We have a DIY course coming soon. I'm working with a team to get that published because I had been trying to work on it by myself and it was never, ever, ever, ever going to happen. And I'm so glad that I found support and I'm leaning on that support. So I'm very excited that's coming soon. Hopefully this quarter, maybe next. And then I am also in training for emotional footprint clearing using the BICO method. This is a highly effective and efficient tool for clearing some of the belief patterns and coping patterns that keep on showing up in your life despite your best intentions. So if you're interested in that, like I said, I'm still in training, but over the next couple of weeks, appointment for doing the BICO method will be available to book while I practice and get better at it before I start charging for it. So you will get an email once that goes live. And of course you can, that got all jumbled. That's not the way it used to look. But you can find me at maryandrew.com. You can find me on the Skylar Network, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and TikTok. So that is why you don't have very much space between stimulus and response. And that is how you can do something about it. You are not doomed to have that situation forever and ever and ever. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions or if you'd like to comment about that, please raise your hand and I can add you as an attendee. And let me see if I can stop the slideshow. Slides. Stop the slides. There we go. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope this was so super useful. And like I said, you know, I need to do these same things. I'm in the process of doing these things. I have to order some more nutraceuticals to complete my protocol on balancing out my cortisol. Lisa, who would be a good candidate for the emotional footprint clearing method? Great. Actually, anybody. Anybody who has some coping patterns that they would like to eliminate, like people pleasing, self-sabotage, you know, taking things personally, phobias are another thing. So it's kind of, the way to explain it is it works directly on the subconscious mind, right? So all of our beliefs about ourselves that we've picked up along the way, like I'm not good enough, I'm not a wealthy person, I'll never have money, that kind of thing. People leave me, people abandon me, I'm too emotional, or, you know, whatever those beliefs are. Those continue to show up in our lives to sabotage what we want despite our best intentions. And then those also layer on with coping mechanisms. But underneath all of it is what is called an emotional footprint. And these are those subconscious patterns that drive all of it. And so hypnotherapy is working with the subconscious as well, but it is only suggestive to the subconscious mind. And the Vico method works directly with the subconscious mind to clear these programs that don't serve us, that aren't true about us, so that we can move on with our lives without them being present. Because the subconscious mind, you know, its job is to keep us alive, and its job is to, its objective is moving forward, right? So if we experience something in our life and that experience contradicts something that we already think we understand about the world, and we can't reconcile these two things, the brain will come up with something to try to reconcile. And it can be a completely untrue thing. But the subconscious mind is not concerned with truth. Its objective is not truth. Its objective is moving forward. And if it can come up with some kind of explanation to reconcile this experience and to make it fit neatly into my worldview without threatening the worldview that I use to stabilize myself, stabilize my psyche, then I'm going to come up with something that fits that. And it might be a belief that is, you know, not helpful. Like, I'm not smart, or I'm not creative, or I don't belong, people don't include me, or I'm not important. These kinds of things. They're not true, but we come up with them and we make them true. And then the rest of our lives, we hunt for evidence that supports that belief, right? So we want to clear those things out so we can move forward and live the lives that we want to live. So anyone would be a great candidate for that. You're welcome. Thank you for coming. I hope this was super valuable for everybody. And if you know anybody who's exhibiting these symptoms, pass it along. Yes, you can send me a message on my website, absolutely. Or you can just email me, marianne@mariandrew.com, or you can get me on WhatsApp as well. So, well, thanks everybody for joining, and I'll see you in a couple weeks for the next one.
Sounds great.